They say mannequins are modeled after real people. I never gave it much thought until I worked the night shift at a department store. Every night, I'd swear the mannequins had shifted slightly, an arm raised, a head tilted, a finger pointing. Once, after turning my back for a second, I found one standing right behind me, closer than it should have been. When I checked the security footage, there was a gap. 2 minutes of static. I don't work there anymore, but sometimes I catch glimpses of blank faces watching me from shop windows. Next story. On my morning commute, I started seeing the same man at every station, disheveled, with wide, staring eyes. No matter which train I took or how I changed routes, he was always there. Once, I made the mistake of meeting his gaze. He smiled, a terrible, knowing smile, and whispered, "Found you." Since that day, strange things keep happening. Doors unlocking by themselves, strange shadows darting across my vision. I haven't taken the train in weeks, but sometimes, in the corner of my eye, I still see him boarding. Next story. When my aunt moved into her new house, she found a locked room hidden behind a false wall. No key, no windows, just 4 bare walls and a single chair facing a mirror. The mirror wasn't a reflection. It showed a different room, one she didn't recognize. Every night, the scene in the mirror changed. Sometimes an empty corridor, sometimes a flickering light, sometimes a figure standing very still, watching. One night, the mirror cracked on its own, and when she went to check, the chair was empty. But faint footsteps echoed through the sealed walls. Next story. When I inherited my great-uncle's estate, I found a hidden basement behind a bookshelf. The door was heavy, steel reinforced, like a bunker. Inside, the walls were covered in strange symbols and old, brittle photographs. In the center of the room stood a dusty armchair and a reel-to-reel tape recorder. I pressed play. Static at first, then a voice, panicked and urgent. "If you're hearing this, it's too late. They're already in the house." I turned around. The basement door had silently swung shut. Next story. Every evening, a dog would sit across the street from my apartment, staring up at my window. It wasn't aggressive, just watching. No collar, no owner. It never moved, even during rainstorms. One night, I decided to approach it. As I got closer, the dog stood up on 2 legs, not in a playful way, but in a disturbingly human motion. It smiled, revealing rows of jagged teeth. I ran, and when I looked back, the street was empty. But sometimes, I hear scratching at my door after dark. Next story. I found an old cassette tape labeled "Play Me" in the public library's Lost and Found. Curious, I borrowed an old Walkman and pressed play. At first, it was just silence. Then, faintly, I heard my own name being whispered, over and over again, getting louder and more urgent. I ripped the headphones off, heart racing. I tried to throw the tape away, but every morning, it would be sitting neatly on my nightstand. The last time I played it, the whisper wasn't coming from the tape. It was right behind me. Next story. After moving into my new apartment, I started getting strange knocks at the door every night. 3 soft taps, exactly at midnight. No one was ever there when I checked. I installed a camera, hoping to catch whoever it was. But the footage only showed the door shaking slightly, as if something was pounding from the inside, trying to get out. I left that apartment after the night I woke up to find dozens of handprints covering the inside of my bedroom walls. Next story. At the antique market, I bought a vintage camera from the 1920s. When I developed the first roll of film, the photos were ordinary. until the last one. It showed me sleeping in my bed, even though I lived alone and had never used the camera at night. Worse, in the background, near the edge of the frame, a shadowy figure loomed. I destroyed the camera immediately. But last night, I found a fresh photograph on my pillow. It was me, sleeping again. This time, closer, next story. In the woods behind my childhood home, there was an abandoned cabin we called the witch's house. No one dared go inside. Not because of the legends, but because anyone who entered would sometimes disappear. My brother dared me one summer to go in. I stepped inside. Dusty, broken furniture, a fireplace filled with ash. And then I heard a voice from the dark corner whisper my name. When I stumbled out, gasping, the woods were different. Older, denser, the sun hanging unnaturally low. I ran home, but the house was empty, crumbling, as if abandoned for decades. There's a hotel off the interstate that's been abandoned for decades. Locals say it's cursed. One night, driving through a storm, I found myself stranded when my car broke down. With no other options, I saw the hotel's faded neon sign blinking in the distance. I should have known better, but the lobby was dry, and the front desk still had keys. No staff, no guests, just me. I picked a room on the second floor and tried to sleep, but the hallway never stayed quiet. I heard footsteps outside my door, slow, deliberate. Occasionally, I'd see the shadow of someone standing just outside the peephole. When I finally gathered the courage to look, there was no one there. At around 3 a.m., I heard scratching at the door. Faint at first, then frantic. Without thinking, I bolted, ran down the stairs, and into the storm. When I glanced back, every window on the second floor was filled with figures, pale, blurred faces watching me leave. My car started as if nothing had ever been wrong. I didn't stop driving until I crossed 3 counties, and I never looked back. Next story. When I was 12, my cousin dared me to spend the night at the old cemetery outside town. It was supposed to be just a dumb kid's dare. Bring a sleeping bag, stay till morning, win bragging rights. Simple. I made it till around 2 a.m., curled up near one of the oldest tombstones. That's when I heard footsteps. Not slow or hesitant, but running. Heavy, desperate running. They circled me once, twice. I stayed perfectly still, convinced it was my cousin trying to scare me. But when I called out, the footsteps stopped, and then a voice whispered right next to my ear, "You're not supposed to be here." I jumped up and ran, abandoning my sleeping bag and flashlight. The next day, my cousin swore he never showed up. When I returned for my things, the grave I had been sleeping beside was freshly dug, the earth turned and loose. There was no funeral scheduled that week, and the caretaker said nobody had been buried there for years. Next story. When my grandfather passed away, we inherited his old farmhouse. It stood alone on a forgotten stretch of land, surrounded by endless fields and thick woods. The first time I visited, I found an old rocking chair on the front porch, rocking by itself in the still, humid air. Inside, the house smelled like dust and something sweeter, like rotting flowers. We started cleaning up, and that's when we found the basement. It wasn't on any of the blueprints. The door was hidden behind a heavy wardrobe. Down there, it was cold. Much colder than it should have been for summer. We found dozens of jars stacked neatly along the walls. Each jar was filled with murky water, and what looked like dolls made out of twine, bones, and hair. Some had names written on them. One of them had my mother's name. We burned everything. That night, as we drove away, I swear I saw the rocking chair move again. But this time, someone was sitting in it. Someone who looked just like my grandfather, but smiling way too wide. Next story. The house next door had been empty for years. At least, that's what everyone said. So when I started seeing a figure in the upstairs window, a woman in a long white dress, I thought maybe someone had finally moved in. I decided to welcome them, maybe bring a pie. But when I knocked, no one answered. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, the place was rotting. Mold, dust, cobwebs. No signs of anyone living there. Yet upstairs, in the bedroom facing mine, the rocking chair by the window was still moving. That night, I watched from my own bedroom. The woman appeared again, pale, unmoving. Her head turned slowly, and for a moment, I could have sworn she was staring right at me. When I finally blinked, she was gone. The next morning, the neighbor's house was demolished. Turns out, it had been condemned for years. There was no way anyone should have been inside. I picked up an antique mirror at a garage sale. It was cheap, heavy, ornate, too good to pass up. When I brought it home, weird things started happening. At first it was small. I'd catch movement in the mirror that didn't match the room behind me. A flicker of someone standing just behind my shoulder. Then came the voices, whispers only when I was near the mirror. I tried covering it with a sheet, but at night, I'd hear it shifting, as if something was trying to push through. One evening, I decided enough was enough. I smashed the mirror into pieces, but the reflection didn't shatter right. Instead of my own reflection, I saw a dark figure standing where I should have been, smiling. I tossed the shards into the trash, buried them at the dump. But every mirror I pass now, sometimes it glitches, and sometimes, I swear, I still see that same dark figure waving from the other side.